house, or every Arizona homeowner's best friend.
I usually start the show with a big welcome to all of you Arizona homeowners, and I will do that. And sometimes I throw a suggestion out there, like you better fasten your seatbelts, put on your hard hat, and stay tuned because we got a lot to cover. And I'm going to emphasize that this hour. And then I am going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to make a requirement. If you're listening to the show in our Memorial Day special edition broadcast of Rosie and House, if you're not displaying Old Glory, I want you to turn the radio off and go get Old Glory hung somewhere for the neighborhoods to see, and then come back and turn the show back on. We are covering Arizona Memorial Day celebration. And I have two guests whose titles are so long, it's going to take me the entire hour just to get the introductions done. So I've encouraged them to stay for a couple more hours, and we're going to continue the conversation. But we have the past Arizona Senator and Senate President, City Councilman of Prescott, the State Attorney General, the Honorable Mr. Ken Bennett. And in all of those accomplishments he's achieved, he said, Rosie, the title I cherish most is Papa. That's my kind of man. Mr. Bennett, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your activities to join us by phone.
Good morning. Thank you, Rosie, for having me. And you said Attorney General. I think you meant Secretary of State is what I served at.
Thank you.
Right. But yes, favorite titles, Papa to 10 grandkids. And we're up here in Heber City, Utah, watching our, I don't know what number he is, but his last Pop Warner football game is this afternoon. So sorry I'm having to do this by phone.
That's fine. That's fine. He sent Ken sent me pictures of a do-it-yourself project he's working on yesterday, and he said, I'm putting a new metal roof on my house. And I said, well, send me pictures. And I thought I'd see like a shed roof, you know. I mean, this thing is like compound miters and hips, and I mean that's a mighty impressive do-it-yourself job, Ken.
Well, me and the University of YouTube can put something together if you give us enough time, you know.
Oh, that was impressive. So the Honorable Ken Bennett is joining us this hour to take a minute to honor the veterans this Memorial Day. And I also have another special guest here live in studio, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne Dahl, who is the policy advisor and negotiator of the U.S. delegation to NATO, who has been serving in Brussels for the last 3 years, has recently retired and moved to Ken's hometown, Prescott. So, Wayne, thanks for joining us and coming in this morning.
Thanks, Rosie. Happy to be here. And again, the title sounds more exciting than it is. And like Ken, I'm happy to be a dad and a family man, and that's most important to me. And Ken, I'd love to get your tips on best places to eat and favorite places your family visited in Prescott at the break. Thanks.
Well, yeah. We've been in Prescott since my grandparents' phone number was 49. I'm literally. In fact, that's the number. Rosie called me on this morning, 928-445-2949. But it started out with just a 2-digit number back in the 20s when Grandma and Grandpa were one of the first 100 people to get phone numbers in Prescott. So we've been around a while. I'll give you some tips.
Well, we got connected with Mr. Bennett through a mutual friend, and Ken and I, Mr. Bennett and I, have had public appearances together before, and we've talked several times in the past. And I voted for him every time he ran for state office.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But it revolved around this whole. We get together and decide how are we going to cover this topic, and we couldn't not do it in Arizona without talking about the Wesley Bolin Plaza in front of the state capitol building. And Romy and I were in conversation, and we said, who even is Wesley Bolin? And how did the plaza get named after him? Romy, what does your research tell you about Wesley Bolin?
Well, the most interesting thing is he was the Secretary of State when Raul Castro was governor. Raul got appointed as a foreign ambassador and left the governorship. Wesley Bolin steps in October of 1977 as governor and dies in March of 1978, 6 months later. 5 days later, they decided to name the plaza after him. It must have been a pretty impressive 6 months to get the plaza named after you 5 days after you passed.
That piques my interest, because if you can have a memorial named, I don't think George Washington had a memorial named after him in 5 days. Ken, what do you know about the Wesley Bolin Plaza?
Well, Wesley was Secretary of State for 28 years, 1949 to 1977.
Wow.
And he was well loved and revered by people all over the state, Republicans, Democrats. I never met Secretary Bolin. I was in high school. I was graduating high school in 1977. But I sure saw his picture on the wall during the 6 years that I was Secretary of State. He was a great public servant, and usually stayed behind the scenes. And I think it was that humble, selfless service. I don't think he ever ran for governor. He was good at what he was doing. A lot of us crazy politicians, we think we're good at one, so we run for two, and we do something good at two. We think, well, we're good for three. He was a consummate public servant, and so. Yes, he only got 5 or 6 months as governor, but when he passed, and by the way, that was the first and only time in the history of the state where the passing of the governor, it couldn't go to the next Secretary of State, which was Rose Mofford, because she'd been appointed by Bolin. This is the one time in Arizona's history where the death of a governor who had been Secretary of State caused it to go to the number 3 position in state government, which was the Attorney General. That's how we ended up with Bruce Babbitt as governor. Wesley Bolin's passing, and it could not pass. It couldn't pass to Rose Mofford at that time. It did later because she eventually was elected as secretary, but she was appointed by Wesley Bolin to replace him. And so then when Wesley passed, it went to the number 3 spot, which was the Attorney General, Bruce Babbitt.
Wow. Now those are levels of history, of Arizona history, you're just not going to get anywhere else. But I have decided in my research this week, I'm going to find an autobiography of Wesley Bolin. I'm going to learn a little bit more about this man. Because what I knew about Arizona history, I couldn't understand why it wasn't called the McFarland Plaza.
Could have easily been. One of the memorials, one of the recent memorials is honoring McFarland. The only Arizonan to hold the top 3 offices in 3 branches of government: governor, president of the Senate, or majority leader of the Senate, and chief justice of the Supreme Court.
Wow, man, this is the kind of stuff you get when you get a guest like Ken Bennett to join you.
And well, we were doing a little reading on McFarland, and he was all over the place outside of politics. He was working at banks. He owned KTVK Channel 3. I mean, dude never slept.
Oh, man. Well, so the Wesley Bolin Plaza kind of drove this broadcast of this particular hour. And there are 33 memorials on the plaza. And I think 9 or 10 of them are dedicated to some dimension of military service. And so I actually went down and I walked the plaza yesterday. And the very first, as you begin the progression through the map, and the map is available on site. I couldn't encourage you parents more one morning this Memorial Day weekend. But publish that map and go and take the kids. The mornings are still very nice. Bring your water bottles and a ham sandwich and just go down and tour the Wesley Bolin Plaza. But the very first memorial dedicated to veterans is the Navajo Code Talkers. And that is so Arizona unique. It's incredible. On the tour, stop 1 is the Navajo Code Talkers, which is truly unique to Arizona in that the majority of the Navajo Native American Indian population resides within the state of Arizona. But it was their native tongue that gave us so much in the way of securing tactics and strategy in World War II in a language that couldn't be broken by the adversaries, the evil Axis during World War II. So the Code Talkers memorial just to how effective they were in accomplishing so much of what we won in battle. in World War II. That language and what that code talker, what do you call that? A regiment or a battalion? I mean, what is it?
I think it was
I don't know, Colonel. You're going to have to come up with that one, Wayne.
Exactly. I mean, it was just a significant impact for the number of code talkers that we had. And what I think is really amazing is it's kind of a look at like asymmetric warfare, if you will. So we had, our adversaries had these very technological ways to code and decode, and we brought in people, and they had a language that was never broken. And again, just a very effective way to defeat something that was very technological with a very people-centric approach, which was, again, I think a testament to our ingenuity also in the war.
Is my memory correct that we cracked the German code through like basic computer logarithms that finally clicked? And it was primarily a team of women that did that, but they could never crack the Navajo language.
That's correct. So we cracked the enemy's code, and part of it was we had actually, I think, taken some of their equipment and never let them know that we had it. But our code was never cracked because it was based off people and not technology. And
then how clever was it on our part not to let them know we had cracked their code? See, it takes kind of a diabolical military mind like yours to develop those kind of strategies. If I cracked it, the first thing I'd do is I'd publish a headline in the Wall Street Journal. We did it!
And I think it was Winston Churchill that actually had made that decision. And again, just a testament to his ingenuity. And One of the places we visited together was his underground bunker in London.
Well, yeah, that was a great visit. Now, we're going to progress through these memorials. And one of the reasons we asked Honorable Ken Bennett to join us is the role he played in putting together one of the largest memorials in the entire Wesley Bolin Plaza. And that's the USS Arizona. The mast, the anchor, combined with the barrel of the USS Arizona and the Missouri. And those things didn't just fall out of the sky and land where they are right now. We're gonna hear the story from Mr. Ken Bennett, how all those things got put together. We're going to do that right after this short break. Y'all stay tuned. This is a great story. I trust you all took time in that first segment to get Old Glory flying out in the front of your house to display it with pride to all of your neighbors. We're here with the Memorial Day special broadcast of Rosie on the House with Honorable Ken Bennett joining us by phone from his home in Utah, his second home in Utah, and Lieutenant Colonel Wayne Dahl, who just happens to be my son-in-law, who's retired from the Army just in the last 30 days and has moved to Prescott. I don't have to get on a 747 to go see you anymore. I can do it in my F-250. Thank you for that, my friend.
Thank you. I think we've seen you more in the last 3 weeks than we have in the last 3 years. Yeah, so it's been great.
It has been great. So I wanted to get with Mr. Ken Bennett and talk a little bit about all that had to come together to create the memorial at Wesley Bolin Plaza commemorating the USS Arizona. Ken, your story is great. I'm just going to turn the mic over to you. Tell us what happened.
Well, I became Secretary of State in 2009, January. Janet Napolitano resigned the governorship to be on Obama's cabinet. Jan Brewer became the governor, appointed me to replace her as Secretary of State. And a few months after I'm the new Secretary of State, I get a call one morning from an attorney over at the House of Representatives, John Thomas. And I guess he was kind of a World War II nut and loves Arizona. And he's on the internet somewhere and runs into some article in some military online magazine that the Navy is about to surplus and sell the last remaining gun barrel that had ever been on the USS Arizona. And he calls me and says, Ken, we cannot let this happen. I said, you're right. So I called the Navy. That was quite interesting. I finally got a hold of the director of inactive ships. Yes, there's a director of inactive ships. And I said, this is Secretary Bennett calling from Arizona. I hear you've got one gun barrel left from the Arizona. Oh, yeah. I said, well, we've got one of the anchors. We've got the masthead. Could we, borrow, buy, whatever, loan that last barrel, and we'll put it out here next to the other couple of artifacts we have from the battleship? He says, oh, we're very particular about the Arizona barrel, even though some other division of the Navy was about to sell it. And he says, well, would you like a barrel from the battleship Missouri. We've got 7 of those sitting here. And I reminded him that I was calling from Arizona. And I said, and then something, I think this was God kind of pricking my little brain. Suddenly the idea popped into my head, and I said, sir, what about this? What about you give us the Arizona barrel and one of the Missouri barrels, and we will restore them and put them out here, and they will represent the bookends of the war. And I can still remember the tone of his voice. He says, ooh, I like that idea. I think we can make that happen.
Explain that bookend concept. Explain that.
Bookends, World War II for the U.S. really started with the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 41. The Arizona and many other ships are sunk, but 3 permanently. And it's become the memorial that it is there in Tokyo, in Pearl Harbor. And so starts with the Arizona at the beginning of the war. It ends on the decks of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Harbor, September 15th, 1945, when the Japanese come on and sign the surrender. And so the idea of the Arizona barrel and the Missouri barrel representing the bookends of World War II just piqued this guy's interest, and he said, I think we can make that happen. So, we can get you 2. So I always joke that that's why we have a $36 trillion national debt, because if you ask the federal government for something, they can't do that. But if you ask them for 2, they can do that.
Now, I laugh, but that's heartbreaking, really.
What did they cost?
Nothing. But we had to sign a 99-year lease for both of them. We had to promise that we would restore them and display them with honor, which I think we have done.
Amen.
And we had to promise in that document that if we ever decided to get rid of them or do something different, we would send them back to the Navy. Now, they were each sitting in 2 different storage yards out in different parts of Virginia, both rusting away. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, this started a project where, and I was a member of the Phoenix Rotary 100, and I mentioned it in our weekly meeting one day, and some of our members, including DLR Engineering and Architectural Group, and the club was looking for something to kind of celebrate their 100-year anniversary as the Phoenix 100. It was the 100th Rotary Club in America, and we were about to celebrate our 100th anniversary. So they took the project on, and instead of just doing the gun barrels, DLR and other members of the club came up with the idea, let's use the gun barrels to salute the fallen Arizonans from World War II. And sure enough, they came up with this idea that in between the 2 gun barrels, we would build 9 blue kind of stanchions coming out of the ground, looks like the hull of a ship almost. And on those 9 stanchions, the 9 represents the 9 minutes that it took the Arizona to sink. On the 9 stanchions coming out of the ground are nameplates for over 1,700 Arizonans who were killed in all the different branches of the military in World War II. And the gun barrels are 401 inches apart from center to center, each inch representing the 411 inches. Yeah, 411,000 Americans killed in World War II. The Arizona barrel is a 14-inch barrel, shoots a 2,500-pound shell about 18 miles. The Missouri is a 16-inch barrel, shoots about a 3,200-pound shell, and 23 miles.
We can get the Blue Angels battle ready in 72 hours. How many hours will it take to get these cannons battle ready?
We'll be right back, y'all. Hang on. There's a lot more coming. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. I know it's called Rosie on the House, and you tune in for tips and advice on your house, home, castle, or cabin. But it is called Rosie on the House, and I'm Rosie, so I'm the boss, so I get to take whatever bunny trails I want to take, and I cannot let Memorial Day weekend go without a special broadcast about Memorial Day. I was touring Wesley Bolin Plaza. It's on Jefferson Avenue. It's right in front of the Capitol building. We've posted some Facebook videos of me at the USS Arizona Memorial yesterday. I think this one should be easy for most of you to recognize. It is the USS Arizona. It has a gun barrel of the USS Arizona, sunk, of course, on Pearl Harbor Day. And it has a barrel of the USS Missouri, on which the peace treaty with Japan was signed in the Bay of Japan. So it's kind of interesting how this memorial all came together. We've got the mast of the USS Arizona, as well as down at the end of the memorial, we've got the anchor of the USS Arizona. One of the other memorials, and they've got 9 there, I think it's 9 that are committed and dedicated to veteran memorial service in that 33 different memorials. But the one that really kind of, there's a couple that take your breath away, but there's one I really admire. When the God of God, the Lord of hosts, knitted me in the womb of my mother's soul, he did not include one thread, not one stitch of submarine courage. It just doesn't exist. And in the last couple of years, I've gotten to know 2 men that were submarine officers. My hat's off to guys like Chris Earl and Jim de Blasio, because I think I could charge San Juan Hill with Bucky O'Neill and Teddy Roosevelt. If they told me, oh, you're in the submarine, no, I'd die of a heart attack before I even got into the submarine. I don't even tour submarine museums that are dry docked in concrete.
We had one friend, and he joined the submarine corps. The first minute he walked in the submarine, he realized I made a mistake.
Oh man! Well, there is in the Wesley Bolin Memorial a dedicated memorial to the silent service submarine. What do you call it? Submariners?
Submariners. So not submariners, submariners.
Not submariners. All right. Here's one that just makes me shudder down to the marrow of my bones. The veterans who served on submarines, called the Silent Force. I'm very fortunate to have come to know a couple men that served on submarines. I hope you don't mind mentioning your name, Mr. Jim de Blasio and Mr. Chris Earl. God bless you guys. There's a lot of positions on the battlefield I'd be afraid to take, but there would be none more terrifying to Rosie Romero than being told, "Oh, you're going on a submarine." God bless you guys. I know I don't think I could have done it, but we needed men like you to get it done. We are joined this hour with special guest, Honorable Ken Bennett, who you all know, you Arizonans, as the prior president of the Arizona Senate and city councilman in Prescott. And I'm just so honored that he took the time out of his personal weekend to join us. Thanks again, Ken.
Thank you, Rosie.
And then, of course, we've got my son-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne Dahl, and I can't not mention my other son-in-law, Marine Corporal Bruce Tyler Stumbo. So if you've got a veteran you'd like to honor, feel free to call Jennifer at 1-888-767-4348. We'll give you some airtime, and then that honor will be recorded in a podcast that will live forever, and we'll send you a link you can share with your family. All right, continuing on. You just
so after the director of inactive ships agreed,
yes.
Well, I'll send you the Arizona barrel and a Missouri barrel. We started a process of raising about $800,000. We didn't spend one dime of taxpayer money. Wow. We raised about $800,000 in services and contributions. Started off with BNSF Railroad. They agreed to bring the 2 barrels all the way across the country, from the storage yards in Virginia to right there by Wesley Bolin Plaza. We had Marco Crane donate their services to pick them up and put them in Precision Heavy Hauls Yard down the street to Empire Cat. We had the Ironwork. We had Boy Scouts We had Schuff Steel donate all of the steel. We had SDB Contracting out in Tempe, Dominic Spagnolo, and he gave us one of his foremen for almost a whole year, Doyle Kahabka, to just oversee the project. ASU donated the services of cutting out with a water jet precision thing to over 1,700 nameplates of individual Arizonans who were killed in World War II in all branches of the military. We had Ironworkers 75 and 847. We had Empire Cat. We sold little bricks where families or individuals could put the name of a loved one, especially of a military member. And so you can go down there and see hundreds of bricks where people paid a few dollars to memorialize their veteran loved one. We got the whole project done, and finally on December 7th of 2013, we dedicated, we also realized as we were working on, bringing the gun barrels in and the 1,700 names, and that we didn't have a World War II memorial at Wesley Bolin Plaza. We had the anchor from the Arizona, we had the masthead, but they were just kind of two little artifacts. Mm-hmm. So the legislature passed a bill, the governor signed it. There's quite a process to get a memorial into the plaza, but we accomplished that. And so we added the two gun barrels, one from Arizona. In fact, the Navy calls them rifle.
I did not know that.
We added those and the nameplates and all of the things to the anchor and the masthead, and that now all has been, as you noted earlier, kind of recast as the World War II Guns to Salute the Fallen memorial.
Memorial to the Battle of the Bulge. We successfully landed in Normandy. We're pushing across the country of France, pushing hard and fast to end the war with a finishing blow to Germany. And it was Germans' last attempt to save themselves and their vision. It was one of the most intense battles of all of World War II, the Battle of the Bulge, memorialized right here on Wesley Bolin Plaza.
So now we have a World War II memorial to go along with World War I and Battle of the Bulge and Vietnam and Korea and on and on and on. So,
the Vietnam, the Desert Storm.
Desert Storm. The day that we dedicated the monument. At that time, December of 2013, there were only 11 surviving sailors still living somewhere in the U.S. from the battleship Arizona, and 3 of them came to that dedication. I think we had Lauren Bruner from California, Lou Conter from, I think he's also California, and then Don Stratton from Colorado. We had 3 of the remaining still alive Arizona Pearl Harbor survivors. They were on the ship when that explosion occurred and survived, and they were there. It was pretty awesome.
Man, oh man. We remodeled a home for a widow in the historic district of Phoenix, and I was in her basement kind of clearing some things around so I could relocate some plumbing. And there was a particular piece of a treasure chest, what it looked like, and she came downstairs to offer me a glass of water. And she got to telling me the story about that chest, and she was in her shower in Pearl Harbor looking out the window as the attack was happening. And we sat down and had a glass of tea, and she talked for 2 hours, and it was like the time stood still. I can get kind of choked up. But I'll tell you what, Wayne, you and I and Rachel and your 2 boys, Gabe and Alex, toured Normandy last May, just before the 80th anniversary of Normandy, which they made a very big deal. I mean, they were building all the stages and everything. We were there just ahead of time. But when you walk out of the Normandy Cemetery Reception Center, there's a wall 8 foot tall, 20 feet long, of marble or granite or something that has blazoned in it a quote that I think should be almost tattooed onto the forehead of every American. Do you have that quote off the top of your head?
I do. And it's a quote from General Mark Clark. So he fought in World War I and World War II, and he actually also fought in the Korean War. Then he was the commandant of the Citadel after he retired. And then finally, he was the director of the American Battle Monument Commission. So basically, he led the organization that maintains all the monuments in Europe for our fallen service members. And the quote says, "If ever proof were needed that we fought for a cause and not for conquest, it could be found in these cemeteries. Here was our only conquest. All that we asked was enough soil in which to bury our gallant dead." And what I can say is, having been to many cemeteries in Europe, British cemeteries, French cemeteries, German cemeteries, and American cemeteries, the American cemeteries are by far the most well cared for and the most hallowed of those final resting places for our soldiers. And it really shows how much we treasure the sacrifice that our soldiers made, and our sailor, airmen, Marines, all service members, to fight for not just our freedom here, but the freedom of our European allies and really the world. And you can just tell the difference in what we value about our service members from one nation to the next on how they take care of their cemeteries.
And in your military career, I mean, you went from reserve to full-time right after 9/11, went to...
So I started out in Fort Benning, Georgia.
82nd.
Airborne School, Ranger
So you went
School,
straight to
82nd.
Airborne, then to Ranger School.
Then to the 82nd Airborne Division.
82nd, and then over to Iraq. And throughout your military career, you've been stationed in Garmisch, Germany, which I thought was the prettiest place you ever lived.
Pretty amazing place. Monterey was nice too.
Monterey was nice, the school language. And then the country of Georgia, the capital, Tbilisi, Georgia. You worked in the embassy there. And then they moved you to NATO headquarters in Brussels. So you have toured Europe enough to see these other cemeteries. Yes. But folks, I can't tell you firsthand what it did to Rosie Romero. Parking in the Normandy Cemetery, and we had been there. We spent the better part of a week right there in Normandy, and this was the third or fourth day. So you've already seen, is it Pointe du Hoc?
Yes.
You know, you've already seen the cliffs, and you've seen the bunkers and everything that we conquered. And you walk onto that, you park, and you walk into that welcoming center of the Normandy Cemetery, and you kind of read the cursory information and introductions, and then you see that quote as you're taking a left through glass doors, and the next thing you see, horizon to horizon, as far as your eye can see, is white crosses. Young men and women that never saw their 22nd, 23rd, or 24th birthday. Americans. They were there not for conquest, but for the spread of freedom and liberty. And it was all like, I bawled like a baby.
Welcome back to Rosie on the House Memorial Weekend celebration. Rosie had invited callers to call in and honor a veteran, and Rick has done just that. Let's bring Rick into the conversation and give him the platform.
Well, thank you so much for this special podcast or broadcast of Memorial Day and remembering our veterans. I am a veteran. I come from a military family. My father was a World War II naval aviator over the South Pacific, and he had a harrowing experience where he was downed on the Pacific in the PBY flying boat, and he said he was on the Pacific for 3 days.
Wow.
And he said by the grace of God, he survived the sharks and any attacks from the Japanese. So if it wasn't for, like he said, the grace of God, I wouldn't be here. So I just wanted to thank you both, or all of your guests, for a wonderful program remembering our veterans. I had the opportunity to visit Punch Bowl in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. It's a magnificent cemetery honoring our veterans, and I would highly suggest anybody who's in Honolulu to visit Punch Bowl National Cemetery, as well as the USS Arizona.
Thank you, Rick. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to give your dad's full name so we can truly honor him.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Rosie. Walter K. Bass.
Thank you very much.
He died at age 96, 96 years of age. And he was a World War II naval aviator over the South Pacific.
Thanks for the call, Rick. We appreciate and invite other Arizona homeowners listening. If you'd like to honor your veteran, this will live forever in our podcast at Rosie on Us, and we'll send you a link so you can share it with your family.
And if you haven't been down to Wesley Bolin Plaza by our state capitol in a couple years, we highly encourage you to do that. We've got Honorable Ken Bennett joining us also on the line, talking about the development of the memorials there, and particularly the World War II with guns from the USS Arizona and Missouri. What else do our listeners need to know? Because you look at the monument map of the plaza, which is probably not even more than 5 acres most, maybe. There's over 30 individual monuments or statues, and then there's even more that are over on the Capitol grounds. So talk listeners through what they can experience and learn at the Wesley Bolin Plaza.
Well,
that's free.
I'm going to give you some insights on something that is not on any of the maps, and that is when we were designing the World War II memorial with the gun barrels from the Arizona and the Missouri. We kind of picked the flag on the far east of the plaza, the Bolin Plaza, as kind of the bow of the. We pretended if that was the bow of each ship, the Missouri and the Arizona, how far back would the stern of each of those ships be? And so, everybody can see the gun barrels from the Arizona and the Missouri. They can see the anchor. If the far east flag is kind of the bow of the ship, the anchor happens to end up being kind of where the anchor would have been on the Arizona. Then the gun barrels are kind of where one of the turrets would have been. You've got the 9 stanchions with the 1700 Arizona's names plate, the metal name plates. But if you go back to just about the base, just east of the base of the Navajo Code Talkers Monument, you'll see a little about 1 foot square piece of granite that says BB 39. BB 39 was the number assigned by the Navy to the battleship Arizona. And that's where the stern, the back of the ship would be, and it's 450 some feet. It's from there. And you look way back to the flagpole on the far east, you say, wow, that's how big the Arizona was. It really gives you an amazing idea. But hardly anybody knows about these 2 little pieces of granite. There's BB 39, which is right at the base of the Navajo Code Talkers Monument that gives you the dimensions of the Arizona. But then you've got to walk across the street, 17th Avenue, almost to the base of the Frank Luke Memorial, and you'll see BB 64 granite marker in the ground. That is the stern, or where the stern would be, of the battleship Missouri, 600 and some odd feet from the far east flag at the other end of Wesley Bolin Plaza. And it just gives you an idea of how big these ships were. So that's a little secret that is not on any map. I haven't seen where the current Secretary's office or the Department of Administration that oversees the plaza has put those 2 little markers on any of the maps. But now your listeners have 2 secrets to look for.
I'm going to have to go back just for that.
You'll find 2 markers, BB 39 representing the Arizona and BB 64 representing the Missouri. And in case I don't have enough time in the hour, I'm going to mention my father-in-law, Clifton P. Tenney, World War II vet, Chief Warrant Officer in the U.S. Air Force, and Gerald Tenney, 31 years in the Army, Vietnam veteran. I want to mention their 2 names.
Rosie on the house, every Arizona homeowner's best friend.